Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is Sukkah Daf Yud Ches. We begin 11 lines from the top of the Amud. Amar Abaye, Avir Shloisha B'Sukkah G'dola. Suppose you have airspace of 3 tefachim in a large size sukkah, which means that even if you would deduct that airspace, you would still have enough schach, which is 7 by 7 tefachim. So if it's a large size sukkah which can accommodate, can tolerate a part of it which is not kosher, so 3 tefachim of airspace, which is the shear of airspace, which is paisei le'sukkah, umiyata, and then he went ahead and he lessened that gap. He reduced it by filling it with bein bekanim, reeds, which are schach kosher material, bein b'shfudin, or rods, which are not schach kosher. Have a mute. It affects the airspace, it lessens it. It reduces it from its 3 tefachim, which is the shear, beyond loved. It takes it down to less than 3 tefachim. And it no longer affects the sukkah, and the reason is because you cannot combine 2 substances. We had this yesterday. Airspace, which is based on a 3 tefach shear, cannot combine bimitztaref with schach pasal, which has a different shear, whether 4 tefachim, 4 amos, as we discussed yesterday. And therefore, they don't connect, they're not mitztaref, since there's less than the shear 3 tefachim of aver, and less than the required amount of schach pasal. So although in total you have 3 tefachim, the sukkah is kosher. This is by sukkah gdoila. By sukkah ktana, however, a small size sukkah, Rashi says 7 by 7 tefachim, which means that if you would theoretically deduct the airspace or this chach pasel from the sukkah, you would no longer have the shear of zayin al zayin tefachim in that schach. Then it works differently. Anytime you reach the shear of 3 tefachim, whether be it airspace or schach pasel or a combination of both, once you've reached lavud, which cannot beyond lavud, 3 tefachim, which can no longer be ignored, that sukkah is pasel. You have nothing left. Since you're not going to reckon with this airspace or schach pasel or a combination of both, which equals 3 tefachim, so now you've reduced your schach from 7 to 4. Besukkah ktana, if you have airspace which consists of 3 tefachim in a small size sukkah, and you went ahead and you tried to reduce that gap. So it depends. Bikanim have a mute. You used reeds, which are kosher schach, okay? You've lessened the airspace, and you're okay. Bishfudin lo have a mute. However, if you use rods, which are pasel, as schach, you haven't really reduced, you haven't really corrected, because the rods and the airspace together total 3 tefachim, which is beyond lavud. You can no longer ignore that discrepancy, and the sukkah now doesn't have a shear of schach kosher. Says this concept of lavud by airspace only applies minat sad along the mechitzes, or speaking at the schach, but when he reaches at the meeting point between schach and the mechitza. So you have a little gap up there. Lavud applies because the mechitza is viewed as though it just connects to the schach, which is within 3 tefachim. So lavud applies minat sad, something which is mechitza related, even up on the schach, but it's next to the mechitza. So you have mechitza and the schach is within 3 to the mechitza, you're okay. Aval be'emtza, but if you have airspace located in the middle of your schach, away from the mechitza, pligibar of achav ravina. The question is, do we apply lavud somewhere in the middle of nowhere? In the middle of your roof? Does lavud apply to roofs or just to mechitzes, vertical structures? We have machlokes, pligibar of achav ravina. Chad amar yish lavud be'emtza, yeah, lavud applies even there. V'chad amar ein lavud be'emtza, up in the middle of your roof, lavud cannot apply. Now, before we proceed, some people pointed this out. I have to just clarify. Yesterday's daf, today's daf, in discussing shiurim For instance, schach pasel, which is paisel ba'arba, or ba'arba tfachim, ba'arba amos. We're discussing affecting the sukkah. As we learned yesterday, Tosfos explains that the airspace is cutting across the sukkah and separating the walls from each other. Likewise, the schach pasel is lying along the midpoint of the sukkah and separating the sukkah into two. So we speak about invalidating the actual sukkah. Regarding sitting underneath that airspace, underneath that schach pasel, that's not the topic of our conversation today or yesterday. That's going to be discussed B'ezras Hashem tomorrow on Daf Yotes. Different topic altogether. Whether or not a person could actually sit and eat and sleep underneath an airspace, pocket of air, in the schach or schach pasel. How does that work? And what are the shiurim there? We're going to see that later. Now we're discussing affecting the structure, paseling the sukkah itself. And the shiur there, as we just explained, is when it comes to avir, once you get to 3 tefachim, beyond Lavid, can no longer be ignored. When it comes to schach pasel, well, that depends. If it's a large size sukkah, which can tolerate more, so you have until 4 tefachim or 4 amos, according to one shita yesterday. Whereas when it comes to a sukkah ketana, then once you reach the 3 tefach limit, be it via airspace or schach pasel or a combination of both, that is paisel the sukkah. So let's get back to the topic on hand. We had a shaila regarding Lavid. All agree Lavid min hatzad works, meaning if it's up on the schach but near the wall. So you have a gap which is less than 3 tefachim between the wall and the schach, surely they connect. Because Lavid there is relating to the mechitza, and certainly Lavid applies to mechitzas. We learned this all along the Masechta. If you have a gap within a mechitza, we view it as though it's closed off. And the mechitza just continues over that gap and closes it. The shaila is whether Lavid was said regarding roofs, ceilings, schach. If you have a gap right in the middle of your sukkah ceiling. So one Mandamer says yes, one Mandamer says no. Asks Tosfos, there's no Lavid up on the schach, how could any sukkah be kosher? He says there's no such a thing as a sukkah without any holes, any pinholes. So he says, the Gemara here is discussing an avir which has significance. It's mahalech al pnei kula. It's cutting all across the sukkah. That avir has significance, and that's what we're speaking about. And that's what the discussion is all about. Is Lavid going to close up that gap and be machshir the sukkah and reconnect that disconnected sukkah? Or perhaps Lavid cannot have that effect if it's not a mechitza related hole, rather just a schach related hole. This is really a question of how to apply the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, whether we do it to this extent or not. Says the Gemara, my time of the Manda Amar Yish Lavid be'emtza. What is the makar, the source for the Manda Amar who applies Lavid even when the avir is located in the middle of the schach, away from the mechitzis? The Sanya, we find a similar halacha in Erevin regarding the kaira on top of the mavi, which was this alleyway leading to Shus Harabim. Chacham said the only way to carry in that alleyway is if you create some sort of separation between itself and the street. One method is the kaira. You lay a crossbeam all across that entrance to the alleyway, which in effect separates it from Shus Harabim and allows carrying within the mavi, where now it's apparent that it's really not connected to Shus Harabim, it's a Rosh Hayachid, and won't generate confusion. Says the Gemara, the Sanya, Koira hayotzis mikoisal zeh. So you have a mavi with one wall to the right, one wall to the left, and of course a back wall. So we have 2 parallel walls. And we're meant to lay a koira across the entrance to that mavi. So koira hayotzis mikoisal zeh. So the koira, which begins at this wall, going towards the other wall. Ve'eina nagas b'koisal acher. And he ran short of material and never made it to the other side. Or v'chein shtei koiros. Suppose he used a combination of 2 koiros, one coming out of this wall towards the other wall, one coming out of the left wall towards the right wall. Achas yotzim mikoisal zeh, one coming out of this wall, v'achas yotzim mikoisal zeh, one coming out of the other wall. And they're heading towards each other, and He ran short of material, and they don't actually get to each other. They never arrived. So we have some gap between them. So either it's the first case where it's a single kara which never made it to the other side, or a double kara arrangement which never met in the middle. Does it work? Well, it depends how large that gap is. Pachas mishloisha. The gap is less than 3 tefachim, which is within the lavud halacha. There's no need to replace it with another kara. View it as though it's connected, and it's okay. Shloisha, once you have 3 tefachim, which is beyond the reach of lavud, tzarich lahavi kara acheres, you need to replace it with another kara. Pretty clear that lavud is applied even mid-air. V'idach, what does the other shita do with this brisa? Shani kairas derabbanan. You can't make a raya from kaira, which is only a derabbanan. Minator, you can carry the mavi. So Rashi says they were the ones who established the isser. They were the ones who were mater. They allowed the application of lavud even in this case. But when it comes to a din Torah like Sukkah or Shabbos, perhaps you have to follow the halacha l'meshim Sinai, which perhaps did not allow lavud unless it's a mechitza related hole. My time in demand the Amar ain't lavud be'emtza. What is the makar? What is the source of the other shita that we don't apply lavud when your hole is located in the middle of your roof? The sanya aruba shababayis. Aruba is a skylight, a window in the ceiling. Uba peseach tefach, which is a tefach wide. Tuma babayis. You have some tuma under the roofed area, not under that skylight, but under the rest of the area. Kulei tamei. Anything found under that roof is tamei. Tumas oil. The oil distributes the tumah throughout the entire roofed area. However, mashe keneged aruba tar. Whatever is sitting right under that skylight is unaffected because he's not under the same oil. So you have a ceiling and tumah beneath that ceiling. So anything under that ceiling becomes tummy except for the thing sitting under the skylight because he's not under the oil of the tumah. Likewise, tumah keneged aruba. Suppose there's tumah sitting right underneath that skylight. Right? So the tumah now is not being covered, not roofed. So now anything under that roof is unaffected by the tumah. Tumah keneged aruba, kalabayis kulei tar, because there's no tumas oil to be applied. And the Mishnah continues with a similar case. Ein baru pesach pefach. Likewise, if the skylight is less than a tefach, same halacha applies. Tumah babayis keneged aruba tar. There's tumah in the home. It doesn't affect something which is lying beneath that airspace. Tumah keneged aruba. Likewise, if there's tumah underneath that airspace, kalabayis kulei tar. Anything in the home remains tar and unaffected because there's no tumas oil. Rashi explains that this is just the beginning of that Mishnah. There are actually other nafkaminas between these two cases, but as far as our discussion, there's no difference between tefach and less than a tefach. In either case, we say the aruba is not considered an oil. It's airspace. Pretty clear that even if it's less than 3 tefachim, we don't connect. We don't close up that gap. We don't view it as though it's a covered area. Apparently, there's no lava to be applied in the middle of your ceiling. So what does the other shita do? The other one who holds that lava does apply even be'emtza. Shani hilchas tuma da'achik mirlu. You can't bring a raya from halachas of tuma, which are based on halacha mishmir Sinai and hachik mirlu. That's the way they were taught. That there's no lava to be applied in that case. Interesting that Rashi, the first wide line, he says like this: hachik mirlu misinai de'ein lavad be'emtza. Halacha is limited. It's focused. This case, this context, Tumah has no load be'emtza. You can't compare it to Sukkah or Shabbos, which are based on different guidelines. Now, the Lashon Rashi, ain't load be'emtza, by Tumah sounds like Tumah has the concept of load, just not be'emtza, middle of your ceiling. But the Rashash asks from an open Mishnah in Taris where there's no lavud by tumah at all, even a chaloin, even a window in the wall does not present a barrier for tumah, despite the fact that it's less than 3 tefachim in size. And it brings a Tosfos in Eruvin, likewise, who seems to allude to the fact that there is no concept of lavud at all to be applied by tumah. So yes, that's a kasha on Rashi, and perhaps some of Farshim say, perhaps Rashi just chose these words because that's the context of our discussion. But of course, lavud is not applicable at all when it comes to tumah. And perhaps the reason would be, tumah is lavud is a mechitza related concept. You have a breach in your mechitza, lavud says, gloss right over it. View the mechitza though it just continues into that gap and closes it up. Because the mechitza, which is a physical entity, can affect the gap as well. Right? The solid mechitza is viewed as though it creates a barrier all throughout itself, even over that hole. So that's when it's a mechitza related topic, like mechitzas of Shabbos, where you create an enclosed area. So you say, okay, the area is still enclosed. Sukkah, it's an enclosed area. It doesn't really connect to the concept of tumah. Tumah is not a reshus related concept, not a mechitza related concept. Tumah is a metzius. It's an entity, a spiritual entity which travels around, and whenever he can get through, you have a hole, a tefach by tefach, he can get through, whether be it on a wall, on the ceiling, he just goes right through it. He travels through holes. So the concept of lavud, which is really a mechitza related concept, a barrier, a dinei mechitza related halacha, it doesn't really relate to tumah, and therefore we say that even if there is a small gap, less than 3 tefachim, the tumah just travels right through it and ends up on the other side. Okay, so in summation, Abaye tells us that when it comes to a sukkah gedola, avir and schach pasel work differently. Avir is a 3 tefach psul. Schach pasel needs more than that, either 4 tefachim, 4 amas, as we learned yesterday, and therefore they don't combine with each other. Whereas by a sukkah ketana, in either case, it's a 3 tefach limit, and therefore, says Abaye, whether it's airspace, schach pasel, or a tziruf of both of them, you can reach the 3 tefach limit and the sukkah's pasel. Regarding lavud, so if it's a mechitza related hole, whether in the wall itself, in the doifen, or up on the schach where he meets the doifen, all agree lavud applies. The Ran explains that that's the Halacha Mishmar Sinai, mechitza and Halacha Mishmar Sinai, as we learned earlier, which includes the concept of lavud, and that's certainly applied to a mechitza. When it comes to a roof, a gag, or a sukkah, and the Taisus explains when speaking that the avir is actually splitting the sukkah apart, then we have a machlokes. Whether or not we say lavud up on top, all agree by the kura of the mavi, lavud is applied. The Gemara says because it's the rabbanon, and all agree by il tumah, lavud is not applied on top, because that's how hilchas tumah were taught. Continues the Gemara, Dorash Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai. So he taught as follows: Bayis shenifchas v'sichach al gabav kshira. This is the case we had in the Mishnah. You have a hole in your roof, and you place some schach on that gap. That's fine. You can sit under that schach. It's a kosher sukkah. Amar lefanav Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi. So he asked him, Rabbi. He was referring to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi, Paresh, why wouldn't you explain further, elaborate? Because it needs further elaboration. This concept of a bayis shenifchas v'sich al gabav kshera is very much dependent on the circumstances. In fact, kach pirish abba, as my father Rabbi Yosi explained, it depends when. Arba ames psula. If the gap between the schach kasher in the middle of your ceiling and the walls to the side is 4 amas or more, it's possible because you can't bend the walls to the schach. It's beyond the reach of doifen akuma. Pachas ma'ab amas kshera. If it's less than 4 amas, it's okay. Because although the schach is in the middle of your ceiling, surrounded by unsuitable material, the wall to the side will just bend along the schach pasel and reach schach kasher, in which case schach kasher is now surrounded and enclosed. Furthermore, Dorash Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, again he taught abruma. Rashi says abruma is min dagim tanim, species of a small miniature fish. Shari, it's okay, it's mutar ba'achila. Rashi says sometimes they would have some small, indiscernible insects mixing with the dagim. He wasn't concerned. He said avruma is mutar. Apparently, in his location, it was known that the abruma was free of any insects. This is what he taught. Amr Lafanov, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yasi. So Rabbi Shmuel turns to him, Rabbi, he says, Parish, why can't you explain further? It needs further elaboration. In fact, Kach Amar Abba, as my father Rabbi Yasi said, it depends where you're located. Shomak and Pleni Asura. The abruma of this town is also because of the insects mixed in. Shomak and Pleni Muteris. However, in the other place, it's mutter. And the Farshim say, apparently, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai was not concerned about other places because in his town it was mutter, and he didn't figure that people would apply it elsewhere. And Rabbi Shmuel was concerned. He says maybe some people from out of town, they'll go back home and they'll consider their abruma to be mutter, when in reality it all depends on location and circumstance. Says where we find a similar concept where we are machzik something to be tzar and mutter. We assume that there is nothing inappropriate mixed in. Kihada Amar Abai, as Abai explained, Haitzachanta. This again is a min dagam ktanim, small type of fish. Haitzachanta de Bav, that was the name of the river, the Bav, Nahara. Tzachanta of Bav, the river, Sharia, it's mutter. We're not concerned perhaps that there are some non-kosher fish mixed in. My timer, why? Why is he so certain that the tzachanta of that river are free of anything inappropriate? Is it because the waters of that river are the rushing type of waters, in which case a dog tummy can't really survive there. V'hai dog tummy, given the less lechut asheder, since the dog tummy doesn't have a spinal cord which properly supports him, he can't really thrive in those waters, so you assume it's free of anything tummy. But that's not so. We find that dogim tmeim do very well, even in rushing waters. Ella, rather, the reason must be mishum de malichi maya, because Bav Nahara has salty water. By dog tame, this dog tame even the less like kilfi, since he doesn't have scales which insulate him and protect him from the salt. Lamatzikai, he can't really do well in salty water. Says the Gemara, but that's not so. On the kai, we find that there are plenty dog mitmeim in salty water. The reason is because the tinayu, the mud, the river bed of the Bav Nahara, does not breed, does not produce like marbe tinayu dog tummy. He knows that for a fact. The Bav Nahara didn't have the ability to produce a dog tummy. It requires different type of habitat, and he knew as a result of that anything in that river is okay. Tzachanta Bav Nahara is kasha. I once heard from Yisrael Belsky Shlita that years ago Rabbi Moshe Feinstein and others traveled up to somewhere in Canada to check out a body of water and to ascertain and to confirm that there's no chashash of dogim tmeim in that area. Apparently, it's all location oriented. Sometimes you have areas which breed and produce schools of just tuna, and it's just known that that area is going to be dogim tahirim, as we find in our Gemara. And they came up there to be mashgiach and to determine with vadois that in fact that was to be true. Says the Gemara, Amar Avina. Yeah, that was initially Bav Nahar was free of anything tummy, but nowadays things change. Va'idna. Now the Shavchi Nar Esan V'Nar Gamda L'Hasam, when Nar Esan Nar Gamda were diverted over to Bav Nahar, and they began flowing in there, and they brought along their dogim tmeim asiros. Anything in Bav Nahar needs to be checked. You can no longer assume that it's dog tahar. Says the more itma, we learned sichich al gevach sadra sheyesh la ptzimin kshera. We learned this in the Mishnah. If he went ahead and he put schach on the achsadra, this overhang, which has ptzimin, that's okay as kasha. Let's go down to Rashi, 3 lines on the bottom. Sichich al gevach sadra sheyesh la ptzimin. Says Rashi, what are we speaking about? Kigon chotzer hamakevas achsadra, the precious masnis. We had this in the Mishnah. You have a chatzar surrounded with an achsadra. So it works like this. You have a housing complex, a U-shaped housing complex. From the houses, you have achsadra, some sort of roof, overhang, canopy, protruding into the chatzar. You have this inner courtyard inside the U, right? Have an achsadra, which hangs into the U, into the inner courtyard, two sides and the back. So now you have a U-shaped house and a U-shaped overhang. He'd like to build his sukkah using the airspace within the achsadra, right? Within the U. So he's going to place his schach inside that airspace, supporting it on the achsadra on all sides. So he has the schach inside that U, being supported by the achsadra. Achsadra supporting the schach on all sides. Now, at that meeting point, where the schach sits on the achsadra, so the meeting point between achsadra and schach, there was some bitzimen are poles rising up from the floor, and the poles was situated within 3 tefachim of each other, which is love it. So now the schach, in effect, has poles surrounding it on all 3 sides. Those poles, which are within 3 tefachim to each other, constitute a mechitza. Now the schach has mechitzas. So those poles were actually built to support the canopy, the achsadra. But now, where we have a sukkah, you have schach sitting on the edge of that canopy, and we have those poles lining all sides of that sukkah, right, where he meets the achsadra on all 3 sides, and those poles are within 3 to each other, right? They're considered like a mechitza. So the sukkah is kosher. So it says Rashi, v'sichich ba'avir shel chatzar, he added some schach, and he covered the airspace of the chatzar. V'samach ha-schach al sfas kira shel achsadra, by supporting the schach on the edge of the achsadra. Ve'ein mechitzas pnimis me'ilas sukkah. Of course, says Rashi, the mechitzas of the houses themselves cannot relate to the sukkah too far. The ish betikras achsadra, because the canopy is yosim arba ames. The tikra, the actual roof, the canopy, the overhang is more than 4 ames, which now disconnects, doesn't allow the bias to relate to the sukkah. Aval it's on a sukkah, but on the sukkah side of things, meaning where he meets the achsadra, yesh l'achsadra petziman. So achsadra happens to have poles, amudim, these posts, those posts which are positioned within 3 tefachim to each other. That creates a machitza, and the sukkah is kosher. Amrina behu lavud. We apply lavud, we close off those 3 machitzas, and we consider the sukkah as a sukkah with machitzas. So once again, says the Gemara 2 lines on the bottom. Itmar sichech al gabech sadra sheish lo psimin kshera. If you put schach all along that achsadra, so again he has a U-shaped housing complex. He has achsadra going into the interior chatzah, into the airspace, and he has schach on that remaining airspace, being supported by the achsadra on all sides. And at the point where he meets the achsadra, there happen to be poles all around. So the sukkah is kosher. What about she'en lo petzimin? You have no poles. So you have a house, you have the achsadra, and you have schach with no walls. Abaya makshera. Sukkah is perfectly fine. Vrava psula. Sukkah is puzzle. No walls, no sukkah. Abaya makshera. Why? Amrina pitikred yered v'seis. We apply the concept of pitikra. I was going to see so in Rashi. Somehow, the canopy, the achsadra, creates a mechitza. Rava amar psula. No, it doesn't work. Loy amrinan pitikra yered v'seis. We don't say the surface of that wall, of that tikra, of that ceiling, of that canopy, is considered as though it comes down and closes the area. Let's go to Rashi on top. Amrina pitikra yered v'seis mikol tzad. We say the pitikra of the achsadra comes down and closes off, creates a mechitza between the canopy and the sukkah, in which case now the sukkah is enclosed. Even though you have no mechitza at all, you're starting from scratch, you only have schach suspended mid-air, being supported by the achsadra, the concept of pitikra can create mechitzas on all sides. Rava Amar, Rashi says, Psula lo yamrina pitikra yoduseisim, can the farish time will come on, it's more later to explain. Oh, explains Rashi, what is pitikra? Oivyan shel nesarim b'chudan. V'hein oivei roshein hakol l'tzad hasukkah. It means like this. If you have a roof, that roof is a tikra. This is the pitikra. Right, the forward-facing surface, the vertical surface, which is the pitikra. That's the face of the tikra. So when you enter that roofed area, that pitikra, that forward-facing surface, that vertical surface, gives you the impression like you're entering a roofed area. It's called pitikra. We learn from Malach Meshim Sinai, pitikra, yerd v'saisim. That vertical surface, which ends in a point, goes right down to the bottom. It creates that barrier, that separation. We treat it like a machitza. When you enter that roofed area, you feel like you're entering a different area. It's cordoned off. It's separated from the outside. So anything beneath that area is considered separated. Rashi learns it's based on gur achis, where you sort of pull down that surface and create a machita. Tosfos and Eruvin learns it's based on the concept of Pesach. It appears like an entranceway. In either case, this concept of pitikra creates a virtual machitza, and anything under that roofed area is considered like it's mukaf with a machitza. So here you have a similar case because you have schach being supported by the canopy, right? So although the schach doesn't have a machitza, we say pitikra yard v'saisim. I'm just going to rule the schach for a second. Take a look at the canopy, at the achsadra. This overhang. It has a pitikra. And we treat it as though it extends downward and creates a mechitza. And since the schach is being supported by that canopy, and the canopy is surrounding the schach on all three sides, as we explained, so now the sukkah is fully enclosed. It has three mechitzas. That's Abaye's concept. Amrinan pitikra yored v'seis. Whereas Rava holds, you don't say pitikra in this case. And Rashi learns, we're speaking that there are no mechitzas, no tangible mechitzas to begin with. It's all virtual. We can't say pitikra in this situation. It says more Amali Rava la'Abaye. L'didoch the Amris pitikra yored v'seis. According to you, that we apply pitikra even in this case. What happens in the following case? Afilu hifchis. Let's say you have a sukkah sitting in the middle of a chatzar, unrelated to the case of the achsadra, just middle of the airspace, middle of a chatzar, and you have only two mechitzas. Hifchis doifen emtzai means you remove the back, the middle wall. A sukkah is really meant to have three walls, one on the right, one left, one on the back. You remove the back wall, so you only have two parallel mechitzas, which appear like an alleyway. Right? So what about there? Would you hold that we say pitikra? The fact that those parallel mechitzas have schach over them, should we say that that thick schach is viewed like a tikra, like a roof, in which case it's yard v'seisim, and now the mechitza has a third wall? You can apply it there as well? Hamar Leis Abai responds, no, certainly not. I agree to you. In that case, that doesn't work. The Havale Kimavi, I'm foolish. It's like an open alleyway, which is meant for traffic to get through. That's what the sukkah looks like. It's channeling traffic, and you can't say pitikra there. It gives an appearance of an alleyway, the Bekias Rabim, Rashi says, and they go right through it. Pitikra won't have an effect. Okay. Says in Lema Abaye v'Rava, perhaps this machlekes between Abaye, who applies pitikra in our case of a sukkah suspended above the achsadra, and Rava, who does not hold of pitikra in this case. And as Rashi explains, the Gemara figures at this point, it's because it's a chiddush to say pitikra when you only have a roof. You see, if you're starting with something solid, you have a partially enclosed area, one mechitza, two mechitzas, so pitikra makes more sense. I'm completing that enclosure. But to start from scratch, you have just a free-hanging ceiling with no mechitzas. Says Rabbi, you can't say pitikra to enclose something which is completely exposed. Lema Abaye v'Rava, perhaps this machlekes between the two is beplukta, is in line with another machlekes, the Rav Shmuel kamifliki. Perhaps it's consistent with machlekes Rav Shmuel Usim to have a similar machlekes elsewhere by Shabbos, the Itmar. Achsadra v'bika. Once again, we're back to the Achsadra. You have an overhang, you have a canopy, like a chuppah. So just a roof with maybe some poles, no real machitzas, and it's situated bebika, out in the valley. Rashi says it's just an example. It's to say it's exposed, no machitzas whatsoever. What is the status of that roofed area? So the bika is a carmelis, since it resembles the shesarab. The Rabban not meant to carry there more than 4 amis. What about under the achsadra itself? Is it Rosh Hashanah or not? Rav Amar mutar l'taltal bekulei. You may carry underneath the achsadra the amrinan pitikra yod v'seisim. We apply pitikra. We say the surfaces, the vertical surfaces alongside the tikra of the achsadra present a machitza. We pull them downward, and we have a fully enclosed area. Ushmul Amar ein metaltal elo b'dalad amis. We treat the area beneath the achsadra as a carmelis, in which case you're limited to 4 amis. We don't apply pitikra in this case. You can't just create pitikra, yesh ma'ayin, just something from nothing. It's just a free-hanging roof without any mechitza whatsoever. You can't apply pitikra in that case. So Rav says, yes, pitikra. Shmuel says, no pitikra. No more figures. This machlekes is very similar to our machlekes. Between Abaye, who says, yes, pitikra, and Rava says no. Says the Gemara, perhaps they're unrelated. Aliba de Shmuel kuli amale pligi. The truth is that it's pretty clear what Shmuel's opinion would be by Sukkah. Why? Explains Rashi. You see, if you see that by Shabbos, he doesn't apply pitikra, despite the fact that, keep in mind, the pitikra of the achsadra by Shabbos is the P of what? It's the surface of what? It's the face of that roof, which is meant to serve what? The area beneath it. Still, says Shmuel, we don't say pitikra. To use the pitikra as a mechitza, as an enclosure, to enclose the surface, the area beneath the achsadra, which it's meant to serve, which is its intended function, right? It's meant to serve the interior space of that achsadra, and still Shmuel says we don't apply pitikra. Of course, by Sukkah he won't apply it. Why? Because in this case, the pitikra of the achsadra and that chotzer is coming to serve what? He's not coming to serve a sukkah. He's coming to serve the achsadra, the overhang coming out of the house. You have to hang a sukkah next to it. That's not what his intended function was. That's not why he put it there. The pitikra is coming to serve the area that the tikra is coming to serve, which is the roofed area beneath the achsadra. So if Shmuel doesn't hold of pitikra, in the case of achsadra bebika, where the pitikra is serving a tikra, which is coming to cover that area beneath it, and still we don't say pitikra, of course in our case, where the achsadra and the tikra and the pitikra of the achsadra wasn't really meant for a sukkah, wasn't meant to enclose sukkahs, of course in this case he will not apply pitikra. So aliba de Shmuel kli amale pligi. Regarding Shmuel, there's no discussion between Abaye and Rava, meaning it's pretty clear that Shmuel is incompatible with Abaye, because if Shmuel does not apply pitikra by Shabbos, he certainly won't apply it by Sukkah. That's pashut. So Abaye is apparently following Shita as Rav, not Shmuel. That's pretty clear. Ki pligi Abaye aliba de Rav. The question is, what is Rav's opinion by Sukkah? We know his opinion by Shabbos, but what about his opinion by Sukkah? That's when Abaye ki Rav. Abaye will say, I'm following Rav. Just as Rav applies pitikra in the achsadra bebika. Just as he applies pitikra achsadra bebika, he'll apply it by Sukkah as well. That's Abaye's assumption. So Abaye is Rav. However, Rava will say, not so fast. Even though Rav seems to hold of pitikra when it's a fully exposed area, such as the Achsadra Bika, it isn't necessarily a proof that he'll apply the same by Sukkah. Why? For the reason we mentioned, there's a difference between the two. V'rava Amar Lacha, Adkan like Amar Rav Hasam, you know what? It's maybe Dafka over there by Shabbos, where Rav will hold. We apply Pitikra by the Achsadra Bika. Why? Because that's its intended function. That's what he's there for. El the Mechitza is L'Achsadra Davidi. The Mechitza is here, meaning the referring to the Pitikra, is meant to service the area beneath the Achsadra. That's what he's there for. The Achsadra, which is meant to cover the area beneath it, has a peh, the Pitikra, which is part of that tikra, which is serving that area. Makes sense that he's going to enclose that area. Aval as opposed to the Sukkah situation, the lav lahochi avidi loy. Perhaps here it's different. Why? Because the Achsadra coming out of the house is meant to cover the area beneath it, to afford protection for the fellow sitting beneath the Achsadra. He wasn't coming to go ahead and create a sukkah. That wasn't the intended function of the Achsadra. So although you have a tikra and a pitikra, not necessarily will you say that the pitikra of the Achsadra will create a barrier and a mechitza for the sake of the sukkah as well. So therefore the schach, which is now being supported by the Achsadra, can't necessarily benefit from this pitikra of the Achsadra, which is meant to service the Achsadra and the area beneath it, and not the sukkah alongside it. Let's go over to Rashi. Explains this in greater detail. Says Rashi, 2 lines from the top. Perhaps there is makom to be machalik between Shabbos, the mechitza is pitikra zel l'shem Achsadra nasa li'isle mechitza l'chalal zeh. The pitikra of the Achsadra is coming to serve the area beneath the Achsadra. Avaloi liya is mechitza la'avar shechutza lehen. It's coming to enclose the airspace beneath the chuppah, not the area outside it. Ve'ilu. So that's the case by sukkah, right? So again, by sukkah, the mechitza of the pitikra. Let's go back to the beginning of Rashi again. The mechitza is pitikra zel l'shem Achsadra nasa. By sukkah, keep in mind the pitikra is coming to serve the ceiling, the overhang. It's a P of that tikra, which is coming to cover that area. Wasn't coming to serve as a mechitza for the airspace outside that Achsadra, i.e. the sukkah area. That's not its intended function. Now, points out Rashi a very, very important thing. Suppose this would have been a real solid, tangible mechitza, a real wall. Of course, there's no room for differentiation between this side and that side. It works in all directions. However, when it comes to pitikra, which is based on a good achas concept, a virtual mechitza, you're stretching something down, there, perhaps you can't apply it to any area other than the intended area. Perhaps when the Torah says good achis creates a mechitza, what Hashem meant was it completes the enclosure of the area within the makom where that it's servicing, the makom that it's meant to enclose, as opposed to the area outside it, the sukkah, which can't benefit from this virtual mechitza. So it completes the enclosure. It's mashlim the mechitza of the space which it's trying to enclose, place which it's servicing, which it's intended to divide and to close up. But the sukkah outside of it can't benefit from this virtual mechitza. As far as the sukkah is concerned, he has no wall. Umiyu, says Rashi, let's go back to that first case. Remember those poles surrounding the sukkah. Even though the reason why he positioned those poles there was not for the sake of the sukkah, it's to keep up his canopy. Over there it's different. Because since those poles were within 3 to each other, love is considered like a closed up mechitza. It's like a tangible mechitza. We ignore the gap. It's one continuous mechitza. So even though the poles were not positioned to enclose the sukkah, they're there to serve the area beneath the achsadra, doesn't matter. Since the perimeter of these sukkahs is now lined up with these poles, the sukkah is an enclosed area. And actually, Taisus points this out back in the beginning of the sugya. That was the chiddush of the Gemara. We had the first case of the sukkah and the achsadra with the p'tzim and its kosher, and Taisus says, what's the chiddush? This is the chiddush. That although perhaps when it comes to a virtual machitza like pitikra, we say, well, let's reevaluate. What is he coming to serve? What's his intended function? And perhaps it can only be applied in that direction. But when it comes to petzimen, which are poles situated within three to each other, the loved concept allows us to ignore the gap and view them as their one connected, continuous entity. It's a real tangible machitza, and therefore it works in all directions. Okay, before we continue, let's just summarize. So we discussed the concept of a pitikra by an achsadra, which has no real tangible mechitzis, just a free hanging overhang, a chuppah, a canopy. We had two discussions, one by sukkah, which was that chotzer, which was mukaf with an achsadra, with some schach. Right in the middle of that chotzer, supported on all sides by the achsadra. Abaye says, don't worry about it, it's an enclosed sukkah, because the pitikra of that achsadra encloses the sukkah. Abaye is moida, if it's a two-wall, parallel-walled sukkah, it looks like an alleyway, we don't apply pitikra. However, Rava maintains you can't apply pitikra in this case whatsoever. And the Gemara's maskana is because the pitikra can only benefit its intended service area. We had a similar machlokes by Shabbos with an achsadra sitting out in the bika. The question was whether the area beneath it is a karmelis or sayachid. Rav says or sayachid. And the Gemara concludes that we have an advantage in that case over sukkah because the pitikra in that case was intended to serve the canopied area. And certainly it can enclose it and create a shesayachid, whereas Shmuel says, even in that case, since the canopy has absolutely no machites, you can't apply pitikra to create a full enclosure from scratch. Let's see one more piece of Gemara here. Tanan, let's go back to our Mishnah, which is going to be a kash on Abaye. Right? Abaye was the one who said that we apply pitikra for that sukkah and the achsadra. Look at the Mishnah. So you have a U-shaped building complex with a U-shaped achsadra within it, with some schach covering the leftover airspace, being supported on all sides by that canopy. What does the Mishnah say? You have to take a close look and see how far is the schach from the mechitza of the bias, which is going to serve the sukkah. If it's within 4, you say daifan akuma and bend the walls over to the sukkah. Otherwise, it's too far. What do you mean? Skip the mechitzas of the bias. Just use pitikra of the achsadra. Where the schach meets the achsadra, you have mechitzas, because the achsadra has a forward-facing vertical surface, which is now extended downwards, all along the perimeter of your schach. V'amai nema pitikra v'saisa tirguma Rava. Ali b'dabayis. So Rava came to interpret the Mishnah, came to the rescue, and he says, according to Abaye, we'll explain like this. The reason why you can't apply pitikra is because it was kishehishva es kiruyev. What happened was there was no pitikra. That's what happened. He flushed it out. He put the schach level to the canopy. So you have the canopy coming out of the house. We had figured that the schach was being supported on top. It was sitting on top of the canopy, in which case you have pitikra visible in your sukkah. The answer is no. It's level. It was flush to the canopy, in which case you no longer see the pitikra, the forward-facing surface of that canopy. The pitikra is not visible in your sukkah. It's being blocked by the schach. Somehow he supported the schach, maybe with poles, or maybe some of the branches or leaves were covering over the pitikra. In any case, it wasn't visible in your sukkah, and therefore pitikra in that case doesn't apply. Rather, the only way to be mashah the sukkah is by way of the mechitzas habayis. So if they're within 4, we say teifinakum. Otherwise, we just have schach without walls. Okay, let's make a quick chazara. The We began with Abaye telling us that when it comes to a sukkah gedola, the shear of avir to be placed at sukkah is 3 tefachim. When it comes to schach pasel, we work with different shiurim, whether 4 tefachim or 4 ames, as we discussed yesterday. And if you have a little of this and a little of that, they don't combine because of different shiurim. By sukkah ketana, both avir and schach pasel are based on a 3 tefach limit, in which case, if you have 3 tefachim of either, one or the other, or combination of both, the sukkah is pasel. Regarding lavad, we said, lavad certainly applies by mechitzes, so whether along the wall, or whether where the schach meets the wall, in which case we consider the wall connected to the schach, so that's a wall-related concept. When it comes to a hole located in the middle of your roof, so by sukkah we have machlekes, whether we apply lavad. By a mavi, which is rabban, certainly yes. By el tumah, certainly not. We had a discussion regarding the chazaka of tzachanta and avruma. In certain places we say that these things are free of any insects. And then we proceeded with the concept of pitikra. We had 2 machlekes. One is by sukkah. Abaye says that we apply pitikra yard v'soisim even when there are no mechitzas to start off with. It's just schach sitting on the canopies. Rava says you can't apply pitikra. The maskana of the Gemara was because the pitikra is meant to serve the chsadra, not the sukkah. So when it comes to the concept of a sukkah, perhaps you need dira. You need that the wall should be serving the sukkah itself. So perhaps it's primarily a sukkah-related concept. Whereas by Shabbos we had another machlekes, that's the chsadra bika. Rav says is considered surrounded and enclosed because of pitikra on all 4 sides. And Shmuel says there is no pitikra. And Rashi explains that's because according to Shmuel you can't create 4 walls using pitikra. You have to have something to start off with, and pitikra will come and enclose that enclosure. We seem to have a kasha from our Mishnah and Abaye. The Gemara responds by saying in our Mishnah there was no pitikra because the schach and the canopy were lying level to each other, in which case the pitikra was not visible, and therefore all you have is schach, no mechitzas. All the best, and hatzlacha Rabbah.